Thank you so much for joining us for this workshop. I am Emma, and I am an intern at the Molloy College Mental Health and Wellness Center. And I am joined by Kellyanne, who is our clinic director, and also the Levittown Public Library. Would either of you like to introduce yourselves or maybe talk a little bit about where y'all come from and what we're doing here? If anyone wants to, if either of you want to introduce yourselves.
Samantha, you want to start off really quick about the program?
Sure. So my name is Samantha, and I'm one of the teen librarians at the Levittown Public Library. And I'm kind of in charge of all of the college access programs. And we're really just trying to provide some programs to help teens transition from high school into college, especially during this crazy time with COVID and everything else going on. We know that there's a lot of confusion and a lot of feelings about, stress about what's going on. So we just want to provide some help and some guidance. So we're so happy you guys could join us today.
Thank you so much for having us, Samantha.
And I'm Kellyanne Brady. I'm the clinic director at the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Molloy College. So we are a mental health clinic affiliated with the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program at Molloy College. And our goal is to be able to provide accessible and affordable mental health services and awareness and increase awareness for the community. So our goal is to really reach as many people in our area and our community as possible by providing resources of what they need to promote mental wellness and also reduce the stigma surrounding mental health through these programs. So we're very happy that the Levittown Library has partnered with us to bring this service to you all. So we're very excited to be here today.
So the first thing I wanted to start off with was just a little bit about understanding the body, because I think that when we understand things like how stress influences us, it makes it easier to deal with. We have to have that awareness and knowledge first. So something that is really common for all people, of course, as we'll get to, is stress, but especially for students and in times of transitions, there can be increased stress. So stress is really the body's reaction to a real or perceived threat. And it's important to acknowledge that there are threats that are real and there are threats that are not, but our body can still react the same. Something else to note is that stress inherently is not bad. Stress is what reminds us to look both ways before crossing the street so that we don't get hit by a car. It is what helps us to stay on top of our assignments, because otherwise, we may not finish our grades. But it is when stress transforms into something that is more intrusive, more long-lasting, and more chronic that it can actually cause your body harm. I'm sure that everyone here is not unfamiliar with stress, as it does affect everyone. And I'm sure that we can all think of different instances. But of course, with this new transition, and especially in a period of such like social and global unrest with everything that's going on, that can even exacerbate the normal stress that we're feeling about these things. So I also just wanted to touch a little bit on the physical impacts of how stress really affects the body, and some of the things that you might have been feeling as a result of stress before, but you never really connected them to stress, because we view stress as this mental and emotional thing because it happens with the inside of our heads, but it does impact all different parts of your body. So I loved this little graphic that talks about the headaches, increased depression, and insomnia that can come from stress. Insomnia being difficulty sleeping or remaining asleep. You can often get heartburn, which can also lead into future heart problems for long-term and unaddressed stress. If you are feeling stressed, you might be encountering rapid breathing or difficulty breathing. Long-term stress can also impact your immune system and make it easier for you to get sick, so that you are more vulnerable to infections, which goes back to the whole cycle of mental health and physical health being intertwined. Going back to heartburn, there's the risk of a heart attack that comes from the stress that you're physically putting on your body. high blood pressure, pounding heart is something that you could also feel along with that rapid breathing in times when you're experiencing stress. Stomach aches, I'm a big one who gets stress stomach aches all the time. And it can even lead to fertility problems, erectile dysfunction, low stress drive, and also missing your menstrual cycle and tensed muscles all throughout your body. So stress really has this overarching effect on almost everything our body does for us. So that's why it's incredibly important that we acknowledge stress and we take care of it so that we can prevent these problems, because they're not necessarily like, when we talk about, I'm not saying that when we have stress, we're immediately going to have all these problems. If we are proactive and take care of ourselves, we can prevent these things from happening. So also talking about a little bit about the emotional effects of stress. A lot of you might be familiar with some of these too. Being easily agitated and frustrated, feeling overwhelmed or a loss of control because of all of the different things that you might be juggling. It can feel like you're incapable of completing it. Difficulty relaxing and quieting your mind, even in times when like you're trying to replenish your energy to deal with the stress. Stress can make that difficult. It can lead to low self-esteem, insecurities, and feelings of depression and anxiety, which we just mentioned. Increased stress can lead to avoiding your friends and loved ones or previously loved activities that are no longer as enjoyable because of the overwhelming stress that you're feeling. And also difficulty concentrating and following through on tasks. And so the connection between all of this is that by becoming stressed, we impact our body and our mental health. And because our body and mental health are impacted, it makes it even more difficult for us to take care of and reduce that stress. So there really is a very important connection between all of these three things. So maybe when you are going into feeling more stressed about other situations, consider what effects of these are you maybe encountering. What of these are like, yes, that's me when I get stressed? Because by being aware of how our body responds to it, we can be better equipped to deal with it. So then if we've talked about what stress does and how it influences us, how do we stop that from happening? Listening to your body is definitely the main one that I would say. Take a moment to take an inventory and acknowledge all the different physical and mental things that you might be feeling when you are encountering stress, and then act accordingly in relation to that. It's a good thing for, it's important for us to make note of that, but then we have to follow through on dealing with the problems that we are experiencing. Normally incorporating activity and exercise into your routine is proven to reduce stress, as endorphins are released when we exercise and they make us happy. So that's another preventative measure. Maintaining a healthy, balanced diet, which can also be difficult in college when you might be more responsible for your food and we're taking on more responsibilities. So making a decision to make those healthier choices and fuel your body in a more fulfilling and nutritious way is also going to help you impact your stress levels. Practicing mindfulness and meditation as well, that allows you to listen to your body even better and be even more connected with your thoughts, feelings, physically or mentally. There's so many free services online that can help you get into it if it's something that you have never encountered before. Also setting goals and priorities, going back to that sense of feeling a loss of control or being overwhelmed. Oftentimes we have to reevaluate what is our life actually like. And so maybe there are some situations where the stress we are taking on is too much for us, and it's okay to say no in those times. It's okay to not take on everything that is presented to you. In order to prevent stress later, we need to know what our limits are. And also taking breaks in between, when you are feeling stressed, like prioritizing taking those breaks so that you are able to de-stress and self-care. And then finally reaching out when you do need help. So, doing something like this, like you are actively working to manage your stress right in this moment, and that is awesome. But speaking to friends, everyone who is a student understands student stress. So your friends who are also going through these same transitions are probably feeling a lot of the same things as you. And also speaking with mental health professionals, and people who are going to actually be able to help you. It's not a sign of weakness when you aren't able, when you're having a difficulty dealing with that stress. And there are so many people out there who are able to help you. So one of the first things that came to mind for me with the transition to college was responsibility. Because when you exit high school, you're kind of entering this weird adult world where you're still a teenager, but you have way more responsibilities than you did when you were in high school all the time. We're responsible for our classwork. If you, obviously every college is going to be different with the pandemic, but if you are away at school, then you have many more responsibilities on your plate. So I kind of wanted to just like pay attention to that. So I wanted to consider what new responsibilities might be coming up for you that you've acknowledged are coming for when you start college or go back to college again. So a few ones that I put in are kind of the ones that I just discussed, is being responsible for taking care of your own schoolwork and assignments, handling more an influx of coursework that you might not be used to with the high school course load, and managing that can also be a new responsibility that we have to take care of. Being financially responsible for yourself, and also kind of being your own parent. If you are not living at home, you kind of have to do a lot of things for yourself that you might not be used to having other people around you. So do you guys maybe have any new responsibilities that are coming up for you in this time of you transitioning to college that you've been thinking about? Whether they might be causing you stress, or they might be something that a responsibility that you're kind of looking forward to. So in dealing with new responsibilities, we've acknowledged like what some of them are, but then what do we do? Because they're coming for us whether we're ready or not. But this is how we prepare ourselves to be ready. So definitely give yourself time to adjust. We can't enter new life changes like college expecting to know the town like we own it and we've been there for years. We have to give ourselves time and be patient with ourselves. We have to allow ourselves to get lost on the way to class, or to make different mistakes. Like it's a learning experience, and we can't expect perfection or ease with these new responsibilities. Also, changing your mindset is something that I think is really important, to maybe not view it as like another chore or responsibility that we have to deal with, but think of how we can maybe view it as something that benefits me or something that I can enjoy. So maybe, for example, I keep going back to like student life and dorm life, but like doing your laundry. Like maybe you've never really done your laundry before and it doesn't sound fun, but that's a new adult thing of you taking care of yourself and doing something for yourself that other people have previously done for you. Or I feel so great when I successfully like talk on the phone with somebody from my college's administrative offices because I needed to make that call. It wasn't fun. It was something I had to do, but I felt good and empowered that I was able to do it myself. So maybe trying to consider how these new responsibilities can be good things for you. How can you make them enjoyable, and be more than just this new responsibility or chore that you have to do. Managing your time well and staying on top of things. Again, we have like totally a few slides on routines, and those will absolutely help you stay in charge of those new responsibilities, and always going back to asking for help when you need it, especially on college. There's lots of different resources, whether it be your advisor, who is the person to help you like make your schedule and who you go to with a lot of academic difficulties, counseling centers, writing centers at school. There's a lot of different resources and people who are there to help you with this transition. This is also something.
Ella,
Yes?
that made me think of something also, that the academic expectations and adjusting
Oh,
to
that's a good
that
one.
as well, which
Mhm.
can be a lot of pressure. So accounting for that and being kind to yourself in that transition, it may be a struggle or a shock at first, but
Mhm.
being kind to yourself during that period of adjustment as well.
Mhm. It's all new. It's all totally new. So I thought that something to keep in mind while we're talking about new responsibilities and preparing for college is to make a pre-college checklist. I love lists. I love to-do lists. I feel great when I check things off of them, and they're such an easy way to make sure that you are doing everything that you need to get done. Here are just a few things that I thought would be helpful. If you like it, feel free to take a picture of it. But definitely make your own, satisfied to your own needs. I'll pull out a couple because you can read the whole thing. But making sure that you like pay all the fees that you need to before getting into college, applying to financial aid if that's something that is important for you, um, registering your classes, ordering your books and making sure you get them on time. Exploring the college website, again, that'll give you access to all of those extra resources you need. And there's probably a lot of stuff on campus that you have access to that you had no clue when you first accepted. So getting familiar with that and accessing your student email or portal if you have the ability to do so before school starts, that's a really good thing that will give you a lot of other information that you need. As for anyone who might be going away, there's obviously specific preparation there. So like identifying like your doctor and pharmacy and things that might be in the area that you're going to, learning life skills that you might need in order to function on your own and taking up some of those responsibilities that you might not have had. Or reaching out to roommates and making connections with people is a good way to lay a foundation for those connections when you eventually do meet in person. But of course, make sure that they are specific to your needs and stay on top of it. And yeah, I love a checklist. So I think that going into college, having a list of all the things that you need to do beforehand is a great way to make sure they all get done. So now talking about routines. So I feel like everyone kind of is like, well, yeah, of course your routine is going to help you out, but there's actually like actual benefits to having them and maintaining them. So structure often makes us more efficient because it allows us to get into the habit of doing the things that we need to do. By having a routine, it results often in lower stress levels because we don't have, by having a routine, you're kind of eliminating a lot of the uncertainty that comes with having to get your tasks done. Routines can allow you to take better care of yourself and your health because you're making it a priority to do those things as opposed to just like going through life and seeing what you need to do in the moment. Routines can allow you to prioritize self-care, free time, spending time with friends, and all the things that you love to do that are going to give you the energy to do all the other stuff on your routine that is maybe not as enjoyable or fun. They often make you feel more productive and focused because you have like this measurable view of what you are getting done. And by getting into a routine, I'm not sure, everyone's really different with what routines they have, but for me personally, a lot of the times when I fall into a routine, it allows me to it's easier to do those things when I've been doing them for some time. And so it allows me to feel more productive and focused. And I think it also allows you to enjoy the free time and fun that you have, because if you are keeping up with your routine, you don't have to worry about, if you're following your routine in a way that's working for you, you won't have to worry about the other stuff in those free moments, if that makes sense as much. Going back to structure makes us more efficient. It helps you achieve your goals and it'll keep you on task. So making and maintaining routines is where the difficulty comes. It's so easy for us to say, yeah, of course, routines make everything better. But how many of us can successfully make routines and stick to them? It's really difficult. I'm sitting here talking about it and I'm terrible at holding up with my routines too. I need this lesson myself. But there's a lot of ways we're capable of making our routines. The first thing that I should have said that might be on a different slide, but is to make it your own and make your routine what works for you. You know, as a YouTuber, the first thing I go back to is like watching people's morning routines. And like, I can't just mimic what works for someone else. That doesn't take into account my individual life and my needs. So make sure that what you are forming into your routine is important for you. But in relation to like transitioning to college and being aware of maybe how your routines may need to change, consider trying to recreate some of the structure you have from home or high school, and really consider what has worked for you in the past, what helps you stay on task, and what actually is going to keep working for you. But going back to what has been working for us in the past and adapting it to our new life, I think is a great place to start. I am a big promoter of getting planners. And I think I really only use it a lot of the time in school, just for like keeping track of assignments and important, you know, when assignments are due, what I have for homework that week, and like other appointments that I need to do. So it doesn't have to be the super beautiful crafty thing. Just keeping a space, or even just like maybe keeping it in your phone if that's something that works better for you. Just making sure that you have a place to keep your routine and keep your things in order, I think can be really helpful. Also making sure that with your routines, you are prioritizing things like nutrition, hygiene, sleep, and self-care. That goes back to our whole talk about how stress impacts the body. So by prioritizing these things in our routine, we're making ourselves stronger against stress. So we can't just have our routines be like the tasks of things that we need to do all day. It should be also getting a good sleep, making sure you're eating right, having a good meal, and taking care of yourself mentally as well. Focus on what you can control with routines. Not everything that happens in our life is within our control as well, but things we can control is like what time we wake up in the morning, what time we go to bed. So focus on those as opposed to the things that are more difficult for you to actually change with your routine. Don't forget breaks and fun time. I'm a big promoter of like, always take your breaks, always have your downtime. It's really important to have that work-life balance. And that's something that you can incorporate into your routines. And finally, just be honest and gentle with yourself. Like I said, don't make your routine that isn't for you. Don't tell yourself you're going to get up at 6 a.m. if you sleep in until 10. Like that's not going to work for you. And you're only going to set yourself up to be disappointed and frustrated. You know yourself better than anyone else, and your routine is going to be perfectly formatted to you and no one else. So don't feel like you have to incorporate things that aren't genuine to you or not going to be helpful. I also wanted to go into kind of maximizing your college experience, how we can really get the most of it. You know, and I want to be clear that when I say maximize, I'm more using it as like, take advantage of the opportunities that you are granted, as opposed to make sure you get everything you need out of college. That's not what I'm trying to say. I just want to encourage you to use this time. You know, this is a very impactful time in our lives. It's huge for our development, you know, personally, socially, career, education. It's an important time, and it will give you a lot of opportunities that you're not going to have elsewhere. So make sure that you are using that to your advantage. Just wanted to be clear about that. Making friends is something, whenever people ask me for help with college, one of the first things I always get asked is, how do you make friends? And so this is my number one answer always, is to join a club. Clubs are great because they bring you together with people who already have common interests. And so like, boom, you already have something to talk about. Like you can talk about what is in your club until you are comfortable enough to talk about other things. And you'll find people that likely you have more in common with than just kind of roaming around campus and trying to meet strangers. And one thing that I didn't know until I got into college was that you can often start your own club. You can almost always start your own club. If there is something that is not appealing to you, I think all you really need is like someone to like be your supervisor. If you talk to your college, you'll find out exactly what their specifications are, but new clubs are starting all the time at college. And if you want an anime club, a mental health club, you are totally capable of starting that. And that could be a great way for you to meet other people with interesting interests. Given when COVID starts again, I think clubs are also something that could totally be organized digitally as well. So that's something to keep in mind, like what we're doing now as well. If things are better, attending on-campus events is also a great way to get involved with your community. Going outside of your comfort zone and saying yes is another big one. I think it's easy for us to like stay in our comfort zone and stay with what we're comfortable with because we don't want to encounter the anxiety that comes from taking risks. But a lot of times I found that in college specifically, just saying yes to something that you might not have normally been interested in doing, like going to an event or joining a club, it can lead you down the path of things that you would not have previously had the interest in doing. So take the opportunities when they are presented to you and try to seek them out as well. I actually think the next bullet point goes in really well to maintaining good relationships, is to invite others to join you on what you're doing. If you're just going to the cafeteria to eat, ask your roommate to come with you. If you're looking for studying, ask someone to join you. The same way that I think the previous bullet is kind of like the reverse of it. Say yes when other people ask you, but also ask other people. And it's important to remember that, especially for college freshmen, you're all in the same spot. Like you're all trying to make friends and you're all trying to get comfortable with one another. So I guarantee you a lot of the anxiety you're feeling about not wanting to invite someone else, they're probably sitting there hoping someone invites them the same way you are. As for like dealing with, so I think that's a good way to maintain connections, is to just make sure you're inviting people to do things and going along with when they invite you as well, obviously within reason. As for dealing with issues, I think that open communication is always the most important thing. I'll be candid and say I did not go away to school, so I don't have any personal experience with roommates. If anyone else does, this might be a good point to share. But I think being open and honest with each other about difficulties you might be having will prevent the very classic stereotype of like leaving passive aggressive post-it notes for each other. You know, if you have a problem, speak up about it, advocate for yourself. And if the issues persist, which is not uncommon, you know, I don't know exactly, I think RAs would be a good person, resident assistants is something. I don't know if that's the exact acronym.
Resident advisors, I think.
Resident advisor, that might be it. That's a good person to talk to if you're having roommate troubles, and you know, you can always go upward of there depending on how the problem escalates. But I think that the way to prevent problems and to deal with them is really to have open and honest communication with each other. Do you have anything to add, Kellyanne?
Boundaries for yourself is something that I would like to add.
I love that. That's great.
I think when you set healthy boundaries for yourself and you understand where your limits are, you're not constantly being pushed past your own boundaries to a place where you feel uncomfortable, and then the situation sort of spirals out of control.
That's such an important part. I love that. Actions with people, ask like the usual questions. If you're like away at school, or even if you're at a commuter school, everyone's coming from different places. Where are you from? What are you studying? What do you like to do? What TV shows do you watch? You could have like a running list of engaging questions to ask people. And I think that thinking of it that way, of like, these are like the typical normal things that we ask other people, can sometimes reduce the stress of having to ask them. But, you know, find like those usual questions that work for you, kind of keep them in the back of your mind, in your pocket. And when you are in a conversation with new people, you can just pull them out and they'll probably think that you are a great conversationalist because you had the insight to ask them a question. Also, some of these ones regarding like hanging out in public spaces. Right now, maybe not the best idea, but you know, we never know where we're going to be in September or October, wherever. So like if you are, even as like a commuter student, I often did a lot of my work in public spaces at like the cafeteria, the library. There's many different like study areas on my campus. So hanging out there will give you the opportunity to see other people that you may have in classes, or other people that are just hanging out that you end up in a conversation with. Hanging out in those public spaces will give you more access to people, as opposed to kind of just like shutting yourself in your dorm room or at home when you don't have class. So making a priority to be available if you're looking to make friends, and be yourself. I think that's a really underrated thing that people are like, well, yeah, everyone says be yourself, but the way that you're going to make like good long-term friends who really care about you is by being the person you are from the start. And if people don't like that, then they probably aren't the friends for you. But by being yourself and being honest and authentic, being passionate about what you're passionate about and expressing your interests, that's how you're going to attract the people that you will really care about and that will genuinely care about you. Getting involved this kind of goes along with like the making friends, but I think it also gives you the opportunity to have different college experiences as well. So like I said, joining a club, attending on-campus events, joining study groups with other people that'll allow you to take care of some of that academic work while also getting your social aspect in, studying with friends. My school often had like a lot of trips that you could go on as a student. They weren't necessarily like what is the word, like class trips or anything like that, but you could like sign up and they went to like Adventureland for like on a Saturday. So you can, oftentimes colleges want you to be involved, so they often sponsor different trips for different places you can go, that are like day trips, and you'll get a discount by going with your college, and that allows you to interact with other people and hang out with friends. So that's another way to get involved. Volunteering or interning as well. That's something that will bring you, more connections and more people, but it also will allow you to network. Many internships will allow you to get like college credit alongside one of your courses. So there's a big benefit to incorporating that into your college life if it's something that you have the time and dedication for. And also interacting in the non-university community. I think this is really good for people who are going away to schools in like a bigger city or bigger community, but I think that could also benefit from commuters as well. We think of college as like this tiny, like it's just restricted to your college campus, but oftentimes there's so many cool events, organizations and clubs and meetings that you can join in your community. And so I think that that's something to look into as well when you're like exploring the school website and the campus. See what else is in the area that you might have access to and that might interest you that is not necessarily related to your university. So there's just a couple other ways for you to get involved or things to think about that maybe you did it before. I have some tips along that route of maximizing like your academic success, because that's important. So my first tip is go to class. And that seems so silly and redundant, but I've noticed students really need a reminder to go to class sometimes. I need it too. It's really important that if you are taking a class that requires you to be in person or present, that you go there. Because if you don't, and if you are skipping class in order to do other things, or if you are just like, I just don't want to go to class, I'm feeling lazy today, you will fall behind, unfortunately, and it can be really difficult to get yourself back on track. So make sure that going to class and doing your assignments is a part of those academic priorities for yourself. So yeah, also identifying your own studying and learning habits, kind of going back to the routines and making them your own. Not every person learns and studies the same way, and you can't expect yourself to adapt to somebody else's process. So find out, and in this period in between high school and college, I think is a really great time to do that. Understand like what does successful studying look like to me? Is it making flashcards? Is it making review sheets? Is it watching videos on YouTube that are related to the topic? Am I a visual learner? Am I an auditory learner? Do I need to learn with other people, or am I better just reading the textbook? Ask yourself questions like that, and that will help you determine how you can learn better and how you can study better, but focusing on what is like important to you and not somebody else.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that was actually put in the chat as well.
Oh, sweet.
And, you know, I want to add to that, going back to the routine and the time management is so important. Your class schedules are not going to look the same as they did in high school. And, you know, I think, you know, that whole mentality of when you're in high school, it's like, okay, I go home, I do homework, I study, and then I can go do whatever I want. It's not going to be like that in college. It's going to look pretty different depending on your schedule. So really making it a habit to study, not just finding out what habits work for you, but making it a habit in itself is very important as well.
Absolutely. 100%. Something that I always like to suggest to students is to take a class unrelated to your major or take multiple classes. I find that a lot of colleges require you to take electives anyways, but I always like to stress the idea of taking interesting classes, not necessarily easy ones, because most colleges do offer some like really interesting classes that you probably didn't even know there could be courses on. And it will give you the opportunity to learn other things that you would not have if you were only focusing on getting your general requirements and your major requirements. Some cool classes that I took as electives was I took a self-defense class that counted as a physical education requirement. I also took a history of art and history of body art and tattoos. Like I didn't know they could teach that in a college course. So there's some really cool ones. And you know, I think it's also important for like people who maybe like aren't set on their major or don't have their major figured out yet. Taking classes that interest you and that you're going to be passionate about, it's going to make it easier for you to do the work as well. Making sure that, you know, if you have like a demanding major, making sure that you have something that is going to you know, allow you to explore your other interest, I think is something really good. And oftentimes it's kind of built into what you know, it's kind of built into the requirements of what you have to do is to take other classes as well. Another good tip is to know at least one person from each class that you can contact. They don't necessarily have to be a friend, but if you have their number or their email, that is a person that you need to rely on if you miss class, if you didn't jot down the homework assignment on time. It's always good to have at least one person in every class so that you have that contact instead of like always having to go to your professor. Using your school's resources, which we talked about, and again, you can find a lot of those just by exploring your school's website. But the library, the writing center, the counseling center are just a few that most colleges will have. And there's honestly so many more too. You know, there's lots of like, I know that our library on campus will often teach like little like classes in order to help you like navigate the library system. So exploring what resources are available to you and actually using them when you need them is really important. Getting to know your professors and advisors and reaching out when you have questions and need help. You know, it is different in college because you don't have like the same like small number of teachers and students restricted to like one building. Everything is kind of all spread out. But if you prioritize like knowing your professors and allowing them to know you, you know, having that relationship that's a little bit deeper will often give you more support than you would have if you didn't seek that out. And also to learn outside of the classroom. And there's so many ways you can do that. Learning things on YouTube, going to events and workshops like this that allow you to learn outside of the classroom. Those internships and volunteer opportunities. There's so many ways for you to not restrict your academic or your learning experience to just academics and sitting in class. There's a lot of other ways that you can learn things during college that aren't necessarily college related. And I think that when you prioritize that, you'll come out with a more fulfilling experience because you learned a lot of the things that you wanted to. The last thing I really wanted, I think this is my last slide. The last thing I really wanted to focus on is staying safe, especially for those of you who might be going away to college and you don't have like your normal, you know, it may be unfamiliar. It's not your hometown that you've grown up in. But I think a lot of these are important for all college students as well. So keeping a record of important phone numbers like campus security, your RAs, local emergency services, the different offices that you might need to contact, having like a list of those that are accessible that you can always go to is going to be important so that in a situation where you need to use them, you don't have to go searching for them. You'll have them right available for you. Always know where you're going and how you're getting there, and making sure that, making that a priority to be aware of that can help you keep control of situations. Traveling with a buddy, especially at night or in unfamiliar locations, this is something you've heard 1,000 times, but it's a really good reminder. Trusting your gut also, going back to listening to your body and understanding your body. A lot of times our body knows things before we do. So when we have a bad feeling, it's often a really good thing to listen to that. You should listen to that feeling and act accordingly. Don't hesitate to ask when you need help. I'm going to keep stressing it because I think that people really need to feel more empowered to ask when they're in a situation that they need help. And also having emergency plans in mind. So consider, the different things that you might encounter. Considering how you might deal with them beforehand will allow you to be more prepared. And that should be our presentation.